Imagine walking into a medieval tavern, expecting warmth, laughter, and ale, only to realize you've stepped into one of the most dangerous places in the city. These were not harmless pubs, they were pressure chambers of violence, rumor, and power. Men were stabbed over dice games, nobles assassinated in plain sight, spies listened from dark corners, and a careless joke could brand you a traitor by morning. Kings feared taverns, churches condemned them, authorities tried and failed to control them. Because in the Middle Ages, taverns were not places to relax, they were where secrets moved faster than armies, where politics were whispered over wine, and where a single night could end in blood, prison, or execution. Taverns were hotbeds of violence. Fight or flight was the norm when tempers flared over spilled drinks or insults. In one study of 14th century Dubrovnik, fully 57% of recorded tavern crimes were violent brawls. Patrons easily turned from merry to murderous. One night in 1134 was gunned down by a rival right in front of a Jerusalem tavern when a dice game went bad. Insults flew as freely as mead. Men hurled vulgar curses, "Your mother is a whore and witch." Even something as innocent as tugging on a man's beard was enough to spark a deadly duel. Tavern keepers themselves were not always innocent bystanders. Far from it, they often instigated fights for profit or pleasure. A 1374 Dubrovnik case shows a tavern keeper breaking a customer's jug, then demanding extra coin for the damage, and finally starting a fight when the patron balked. He even blamed the drunken guest in court. So these ale-slingers were both defenders of their property and its fiercest predators. In short, no one was safe. Even noblemen and clergy were warned to avoid pubs. The Knights Templar forbade soldiers from entering them due to the violence inside. Theologians preached constant sermons warning people away from taverns, reinforcing that trouble was expected and expected. Beyond sword fights, taverns posed other hazards. Hygiene was non-existent. Spilled beer pooled on the floor, rodents and lice lurked in corners, and food was often rotten. Customers risked disease as much as bloater meats. Remember, the Middle Ages had no modern medicine. Infection was a constant threat. Unsanitary conditions made taverns fester beds of plague and poison. Some inns were literal death traps. Travellers' chronicles complain of flea-infested floors and logs used for pillows. And one early English inn even laid out corpses or bodies as bedding. You might get stabbed or get bedbugs. In this wild climate, every sip of sour wine or stolen kiss could mask a much darker danger. But danger wasn't only brawn, it was brain. Taverns were the internet of the Middle Ages. Illiterate peasants, foreign merchants, and mercenaries all gathered over mugs to share news, gossip, and wild rumors. Historian Jacques Le Goff notes that taverns were nodal points for networking. News of foreign kings, ancient legends, and the latest crusading war spread from hearth to hearth. Men's views of the world were forged in alehouses. This made taverns extremely political. Peasants debated tax edicts and heard tales of rebellion in alehouses. Friars and heretics slipped in to preach. For example, authorities recorded that Lollard preachers in early 1400s England deliberately used taverns instead of churches to spread forbidden gospel. William Trivett of Leicester was caught teaching in taverns on Sundays, and William Ramsbury even held a mass in Wiltshire pubs. Their goal? To whisper rebellion into drinkers' ears, since tavern revellers might later talk of it on the road or the fields. No wonder the Crown feared unlicensed verbal activity. Any bit of seditious secret spread by candlelight could spark a revolt. By the late Middle Ages, kings and mayors knew that controlling taverns meant controlling ideas. Officials tried to censor bawdy songs and rumour-mongering. Town laws often barred priests from patronizing pubs. But such rules were impossible to enforce when illiterate labourers were everywhere, hungry for news. All across Europe, rulers found that provincial gossips in taverns circulated worldly legends and political ideas, from the peasant news of the Black Death's aftermath to tales of princesses poisoning kings. In short, taverns made politics public. Every lager-laden evening was a risk that a drunken minstrel might incite rebellion with a new ballad, or that foreign spies might catch wind of a secret army movement just by eavesdropping on your table talk. The same atmosphere that made taverns dangerous and political also bred secrets. It wasn't just common gossip. Spies, conspirators, and criminals loved taverns. In fact, chroniclers of medieval intelligence admit that most secret intelligence was no more than tavern gossip. One 14th-century Burgundian spy network admitted that the information we gathered was worthless. Most of it seems to have been derived from tavern drinkers. Spies would mingle with soldiers and wine sellers, learning everything from troop movements to commercial secrets over a goblet of mead. By contrast, the most reliable spies were turncoat nobles who already held real knowledge. In other words, if you knew the code phrase or just nodded at the right table, you could walk out of a dank taproom having gained more intel than months of royal reconnaissance. Some of the boldest secrets were hidden literally underground. Across Europe, taverns and inns sometimes had hidden chambers and escape tunnels built into their walls. Take the famous Mermaid Inn in Rye, England. This late 15th century pub has 900-year-old cellars riddled with secret passageways. Legend says smugglers of the 18th century, like the notorious Hawkhurst gang, stored contraband in its vaults and slipped out a back tunnel to reach ships offshore. As the Mermaid's current owner notes, there are tunnels and secret passages, so anyone hiding here could be on a ship to France in minutes. Whether bandits escaped lawmen or traitors fled after a coup, taverns often had plausible hideouts. Locals also kept secrets. Thieves bought a round of ale to launder stolen coins, plotting their next raid by the hearth. Royal spies lurked in shadows to overhear merchant deals. Even the church colluded. Covert clerics sometimes tracked heretics through pub talk. Whenever a knight bent the knee for a clandestine tryst, or a noble plotted a rebellion, the king's spies knew to stake out the nearest inn. In effect, taverns were stage and cloakroom for all manner of dark bargains. A bard's innocent tune or a barmaid's flirty whisper could cloak a deadly secret mission. It didn't end there. Taverns even had their own criminal codes. Drunken patrons ran protection rackets on each other, forming crude tavern mobs where loyalty to your pub could mean life or death. In France, a gang of pub owners even set fire to a rival's house after a brawl, leading to charges of arson and murder. Municipal records show that sometimes the local mayor or cleric was in on the secret deals, protecting the criminal pub landlord.
One burned-down inn in Arras in the 1280s revealed a web of bribery. Its arsonist was defended by the city's own baillie, who later was convicted of corruption. Crime, corruption, and secrets all flowed as freely as wine at the tavern bar. By the late Middle Ages, taverns were hardly peripheral. They were the heart of medieval urban life and the underbelly. In one compelling study, a historian found that English tavern brawls tell us as much about medieval culture as any castle chronicle. Crime has to be viewed as one of the basic social activities, he explains, and taverns were where that activity thrived. In Dubrovnik, England or Jaffa, tavern-goers were typically workers, sailors, artisans, the backbone of society, shouting in anger or joy over every table. Their rough laughter and whispered deals knitted together the social fabric of the age, warts and all. So next time you raise a pint and imagine merry medieval nights, remember the truth. These alehouses were alive with risk and intrigue. Every goblet was a gamble. not just on your pockets, but on your life and secrets. They were schools of sedition and breeding grounds for bandits, where innkeep and outlaw alike whispered of kings, conspiracies, and carousing. The medieval tavern was a crossroads of danger, politics, and secrets, a place where spilled drink could cost you a life, and spilled secrets could topple thrones. In those dark wooden rooms, history was written not by nobles in castles, but by the loud, drunken voices in the corner of the pub.